This is an open letter to the Red Team and to the Sane Society. Red Team, congratulations, you have won. Bravo, bravo, you have won the last round of election. This recent time circus came to town, the Red Team won, and bravo. Job well done. However, this whole business of making MAGA, making America great again, this whole business is, let me put it this way. I just watched a clip of two people, one a bit smaller one a little bigger one. Apparently one of them was a kickboxing champion or kickboxing winner of some kind or practicer of some kind. So they just passed through the bar, the big guy was passing the little guy through the bar. The little guy was obviously very drunk. So they happened to, hit each other during passing. And this was for real, because apparently the legal system had to get involved, according to the news. So the big guy turns around and sees the little guy is drunk, and the little guy, throws a hissy fit as if like, I'm somebody. And the big guy who's a champion of kickboxing or wrestling or something like that, just hit him on the face. With one the guy went down, but he actually went for a second one, which missed because the guy was already down. So the idea is that, exactly how long do you think before this kind of interaction doesn't take place? Apparently the court found in favor of the big guy and said he was defending himself, because the other guy, threw a shoulder up, and apparently the big guy claimed that throwing shoulder up, as in like, what you want, that's that's an attack. So he knocked him out. It's kind of like, what happened to the Iraqis. They threw their shoulder up, and Uncle Sam went in, and Uncle Sam's managers went in and 1-2, shock and awe, and Uncle Sam, Saddam was out. My point is this: George W. Bush, and this guy in the bar, the highest member of the tribe to the lowest member of the tribe, they have shown such a reaction to some stupid guy throwing their shoulder up, and if that can result into such a harsh reaction with legal impunity, that is not the mindset of a tribe that that is going back to the 1950s. You see, here's the thing: if I had to choose, I would have loved to live in the 1950s and 60s in North America, because it was the time when sane people were in charge, and beside that whole McCarthy era, but other parts of it, sane people were in charge and people were sane. You see, this is the thing about make it great again. First, the people have to become great. And The only thing that does that is education. And then when the people are great, then they are horrored if by actions of somebody like George W. Bush in terms of internationally, or the actions of this kickboxer in a private setting in a bar. Everybody would be horrified, but nobody did. Nobody got horrified. When the arena mindset sets in, which UFC is has become the most popular sport, specifically in North America. It's less international, but the whole violence of it, the whole carnal nature of UFC, that no holds barred. We don't hold. It's all grudge here. We don't we like to piss on each other's grave if we get a chance. We like to see. I like the one guy likes to see the other guy dead, and to that extent. That's not the mindset of the people of the 1950s in North America. That's not their mindset. You see, where I'm going with this is that how long did it take China in the recent history? How long did it take China to become great again? About 100 years, at least 50 years. And it starts with education of the children, and somehow pushing that selfish mentality out of the minds of the people. Maybe not to the extent that the Chinese carried it out in the Mao time. Maybe not to that degree of violence, but the idea is that first, because it's the people who get educated, at least for a generation. In other words, I'm trying to say is that at least it will take 20 to 25 years to, if you say make America great again, at least it takes a generation. If you start, it's that level of complexity, trying to push the society back to where everybody has, most people have respect for their own society, have knowledge enough to not be so gun-ho, have be secure enough not to demand everybody has to submit to their will. It takes a long time. It takes at least I guess what I'm trying to say is that 15-year-old in school right now, 18-year-old, 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 12-year-old who is in school right now, if you turn the key and start teaching the right things regarding responsibility and care and responsibility and decision making, if you teach exactly the right things from tomorrow, it will take 25 years, because it's not one thing that you can do that makes the society great. It's a collection of a lot of things, but the main thing is how well informed and well cultured the society is. A vengeful, scared society. And when I say vengeful and scared, it's like I was watching two 12-year-olds. They were men, but this video, it was like I was watching two 12-year-olds in a bar. And I have a feeling if these two were George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, they would have reacted the same way, knocking each other out. If they didn't know each other, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, and had this kind of a bump of a shoulder in a bar, they both would have knocked each other out. Try to, just like what happened in this video. Yes, there were some drinks. Here's the thing about one of them, the fact that both of them had something to drink, but one of them, the weaker one, obviously was a little drunk, is alcohol rubs off the very thin veneer of civility. If there is a lot of civility, you have to get really drunk for the original to show. The original human is a violent monkey. So you actually, civility is the veneer that tries to hide the original entity, which is a wild animal. Then you layer it, with stain and veneer and stain and lacquer and stain and lacquer. You build it up so it will become civilized. And if it's very civilized, it takes a lot of alcohol before the civility rubs off, and you can see the original, which is a violent monkey, violent animal. But if you have very little civility build up because the education was not well, the educators were not apparently well, the education was not well, the whole society was going the wrong direction, the direction of let's learn less, understand less, because we are right. We don't need to understand the people from Angola. Fuck them. We are right and they're wrong. They either accept Christianity and the superiority of our ways, that is democracy and capitalism, or they will suffer the consequences. That's a very thin layer of civility on the original. I guess what I'm trying to say is people who are violent and have violent tendencies, and whether they're being the presidential post in a tribe or whether they're cleaning the road, if you have civilized them well, that layer is thick enough that even when they're drunk, they're still civil to some degree. They have to be really drunk not to lose that thin veneer of civility. So my point is this, that it takes many years to that veneer of civility to return. It takes many years. It takes a generation. If you start this greatness project today and say, okay, we are going to stop spending all the money on defense and we're going to just make an expenditure on education, and from people who just enter school we're going to do great, it's going to take 25 years for the system to become great again, because every individual brick in the society has to absorb many more layers of stain and veneer, layers upon layers, for the society to become the kind of civilized society that a lot of the problems that a not very civilized society has can be solved. The prison overpopulation and the whole, the selfish nature of extreme capitalism and how it's being allowed to be carried out. All of that is just because, most layers of the society have got a very thin, thin layer of lacquer or veneer or stain on them, and with not much difficulty that goes away and the members become violent. and extremely rude. And that's what you see, what you see in the plains, mostly in North America, and people are rude to each other, and then they have to be kicked out of this flight and that flight. Then they're rude to each other in the. I mean, if you just a little if you're just a little upsetting to the other guy sees fit to, you know, come out kicking. I personally, I've had experience with few times that I participated in any kind of crowded environments. I've noticed that it's very, you know, it's clear that it's that self-respect and that social respect for the society and for the other is not there. It's not there. And it starts from the top. It starts from the fact that, you know, people at the top think, you know, people at the bottom don't need an education, but JP Morgan Chase need a little more in their portfolio. So we're going to spend money to put a little more in the portfolio of JP Morgan Chase. Then we are going to spend money on educating the lesser members of our tribe. That by itself says a lot when the leaders are, you know, that blind to the fact of what makes a civil society civil. You have to teach them civility, you know, and you have to teach them love. If you're not feeding them, I mean, it's amazing that recently in Minnesota, the governor passed a bill that the kids should have something to eat at lunch. The kids of our tribe should have something to eat at lunch if they don't have anything to eat. Well, duh. I mean, do you want the children of the tribe to learn or you don't? If you want them to learn anything, they need to be there. And it's the job of the tribe. I mean, if you told this to a president before Kennedy, if you told them that, hey, this, you know, children are hungry, blah blah blah, any of those presidents would have said, yeah, that makes sense. Let's stop spending money on such and such external project, which always usually ends up the money going to war, and let's concentrate on this matter at home. But, you know, after Kennedy, most of the presidents have become in North America, in Uncle Sam's land, most of these presidents, and of course all of the bureaucracy, has become more concerned with things that has nothing to do with how civilized a society is, their own society is, and how much civility is being taught. In other words, you know, look at the Japanese educational system and try to copy it. It's obviously doing a great job, you know, clean cities, productive people. Yeah, they have their issues, but a lot of that is because they haven't been allowed to grow or expand or do anything. So it's a society in chains by Anglo-Saxons. Japan is a, you know, society that has been enslaved by the Anglo-Saxon. Well, that's a result of war. Then you have to ask who caused that war. It wasn't the Japanese. Anyway, my point is this, that another way of going great is if, you know, greatness is always relative, right? So what if we turn the other people's homes, lands, into a bucket of scrap metal, and then by comparison we're going to be great. You see, this is exactly what happened during World War II, I believe, one or two. or started with one, ended with two. That basically the rest of the planet turned into a bucket of bolts. And then North America, in comparison, became the great engine of production, the great production engine. Just because that was that is what was left on the table. But remember that repeating that scenario is hazardous, because intercontinental ballistic missiles were invented after that conflict. So it's no longer, you're an island to thyself, and you can't just fight the war over there. One of these major conflicts may end up, closer to home, because these fucking things are coming from outside of the atmosphere. You see where I'm going with this? So if the war cannot be restricted to just over there, if the war cannot be restricted to that, then this idea of let's turn their homes into pile of rubble, so as comparison ours would seem great, and once again we can become the engine of production for the planet, that's not possible anymore because of intercontinental ballistic missiles. So this whole idea of the it goes off the rails real fast. I'm trying to stay out of, I'm a little restricted, so that's why I have to choose my words carefully, but this is what it is. So you can't destroy them, so in comparison you will look great. So the other option is very long term. The other option is a 25-year option at least. Spend all spending on conflicts overseas and concentrate on educating the public. Still, it will take 25 years for the new culture to arrive in the scene. One generation. But and the whole and this is not just I'm not talking about just a few incidents that I've seen in the bar, and the way I've seen presidents in Uncle Sam's land behave violently and selfishly around the world. Not that, the whole it's the whole spiel too. I mean, you see it, the way high expectations and low productivity in terms of the culture of productivity. It can't be, I guess what I'm trying to say is this can't be done overnight. This is not a project that can be accomplished overnight, and not even everybody's on board to accomplish it, because if you're sending your own children to private schools and private islands and everything is fine with you, and you're holding power because you have all the money, you're not really interested in any kind of change. You think everything is dandy. The reason you think everything is dandy is because, for example, Mr. Jeff Bezos has gone and bought one of the farthest livable islands from the mainland, for example, in Florida. It's sort of like If I don't have to see them, I don't have to deal with them. And that's why, there you have, rich areas of town, rich areas of cities, and in a way that they have actually walled themselves off from this and the rest of the city. So you have Paradise Valley in Arizona, and you have Scottsdale, which is, when they are all full of gated communities, that's in a way it's one great gated community, becomes one great gated community. They're all privately owned gated community, but it's collectively they're like the city of their own within a larger poor city. The Citadel, the in the middle of the Citadel, where the kings reside. You see where I'm going with this? So when you have this much disparity, this much income inequality, in which the society has separated to different layers. It's like one layer of people who have enough money who have enough in money and influence, who make it to the Burning Man, and then they can reenact Woodstock, and those who don't have enough money and can only watch it or read about it. Again, this income inequality has made it impossible. It has made in society impossible to function as one. We all know that Woodstock was an environment in which many rich and poor attended, and it was, but can you imagine Woodstock or something similar to it in the year 2024? It's impossible. There are 90% of society which is working 3 jobs just to keep their head above water, and then there is 10% who don't have any jobs, don't require any jobs. Again, and all of this, and you can go over other examples, that going to greatness is not just, you can't turn the key. For example, the recent incidents in which the sons of both presidents have been known or involved, in drugs that the common folks, if they use it or possess it, it's illegal. But then the family and or the leaders themselves use it, and it's obvious. There was a clip of, there are videos and clips of both sons of both presidents, the one outgoing and the one incoming, have used, or there's evidence that they have used things that are considered illegal for the commoners. That's not something that you can say that we can be like that and be great as well. It just doesn't work. Greatness, meaning the 1950s greatness, means a degree of the chrome. I don't know the correct word or correct pronunciation of it. A degree of respect for self, a degree of respect for each other, a degree of calmness, a degree of, gentleness, a degree of education, a degree of, respect for the job, respect for the environment. Some cocaine was left in the White House and it was such a such a crazy incident that it even got out. It's like, are you kidding me? It's sort of like, isn't this what you're putting people in prison for? What do you mean? It's not that they didn't use it, or yeah, the good leaders in the 1950s, I kind of doubt any of them used any kind of these stimulants, or any of their family was involved in any kind of chemical stimulants. But it has become prevalent in the ruling class, and nobody even blinks an eye anymore, because the separation of oil and water, 90% of water in the society and the 10% of the oil on top, they have become separated. So the oil has follows a kind of unwritten law which says you don't ask too many questions of the 10%, no matter what they do. Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, you can't question them no matter what they do. Mr. Bill Clinton, what they do, what they have done, nobody can investigate, nobody can question. Not really. Not even in the media. Forget about real investigation. Not even in the media. And then you move from drugs, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? And then you move from drugs to sex, and then poor Matt Gaetz is, nailed to the cross for something that is normal, has become normal for the 10%. Mr. Stephen Colbert actually sent a reporter, sent somebody's grandma to a sex club in New York City right after the COVID. Mr. Stephen Colbert on his show, The Late Show, sent somebody's grandmother. They invited him or something like that, but he sent somebody's grandmother to report from basically an orgy house, a sex club in New York. And basically the theme was, COVID is gone, everything is good. If you have your jab, you can visit sex clubs from now. And something that 99% of the society at large is only heard about it. They can't even forget about becoming a member. They can't even imagine it. How rude do you have to be to want to perform sexual act in front of others, and how rude and animalistic, uncivilized you have to be who would actually want to watch it. Although we all do, many do on the screen, but in the live event, watching a sexual act is not civilized. Just like watching UFC is not civilized. Let's be frank. It's not. Watching boxing is not civilized. People beating each other's brains out until maybe you're actually hoping some of the brain comes out. I have a feeling those people who sit beside the ring and get splashed with some of the saliva on the brain, not brain but blood particles, they actually have they keep telling that stories to their friend, that this is a great thing, I was so close to the rim that I got splattered with some saliva and blood when that motherfucker knocked this motherfucker out. Anyway, my point is this bloodlust, these craving of violence, craving for violence, the incivility of it all is flags of a society that will take 25 years if the keys turn tomorrow. It will take 20 to 25 years to wash out the bad understanding of what is civility, what is a society. To wash out that misunderstanding, it will take 20, 25 years if you start tomorrow. self-respect, social respect, respect for other members of the tribe, respect for, sanity, respect for, not liking things that are enjoyable to violent animals, not liking this, not having the same likes. Maybe a wolf likes other wolves have sex in front of him, and other wolves kill a baby deer in front of him, just suffocate him and start eating him alive. Maybe one wolf likes to see that in front of him. But when you want to make a civilized man, you have to make individuals in a way, you have to culture them, you have to teach them, you have to civilize them in a way that they would not want to see these violent, because violence goes exactly 180 degrees against civility. It's exactly the opposite. Violence and civility, they are the exact opposite. Then when violence is glorified, that means civility has left the room a while ago. Had left the room a while ago. When violence is glorified and violence is, they give prizes to whoever can be more violent in the shortest period of time. Even in the close setting of based on some kind of rules in a game, still glorification of violence. Contact sport, the glorification of contact sports, which contact sports. There was no football in the 40s or the 50s, at least with this degree of popularity. There were no UFCs 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It just keeps getting less civilized and more violent. The system, less civilized, more violence. Exactly how long do you think it's going to take to reverse the trend? Even in terms of sex, it's like they crucified Matt Gaetz, but we all, on the same night that Stephen Colbert has a handful of jokes about Matt Gaetz and his like of young pussy, in the same night or maybe a night after, he's all glory to Bill Clinton, and he interviews Bill Clinton and his glory to Bill Clinton, and it's sort of like, and then sends, as I said, sends the reporter to a sex club in New York. Again, this kind of back to carnality, so much emphasis on sex. You gotta fuck as much as you can. Everybody is doing it. It's not Matt Gaetz. Everybody is, at least in the 10%, top 10% of the. They say that very young people have stopped having sex. Well, because the top 10%, again, has become another thing like cocaine that only the top 10% gets to legally use, apparently, and the 90% can't. Sex has become another thing that apparently the top 10% are killing themselves to get as much as they can, and the bottom 90% actually can't afford sex, because sex comes with a lot of times come with children and responsibility, and even marriage and responsibility, or even general drama that has a lot of financial downfalls. So the general 90% of the public, the young people who are supposed to be having the sex, are not having the sex according to statistics. But the 35-year-old to 55 or to 65-year-old financiers and bankers are having multiple sexual partners at a time. They're just killing themselves for more. Seriously? And you think this is going to greatness? No, the whole idea that the society is layered is against greatness. You cannot have a great society when this much separation between economic classes. You just can't. Greatness is, you know, and the fact that they actually want to do it. That's against every one of these indicators is showing going away from civility. The social economic stratification, the nonchalant attitude of society towards violence, whether it's international or in the ring, the Caligula level of sexual appetite and wanting and just needing to prove that you got it, you're getting as much pussy as you can handle, and all of that degree of things that shouldn't be important are important. They shouldn't be important if you're saying we have a civilized society. As soon as these things have become important, that means you have moved away from a civilized society. Because, only animals enjoy watching their own having sex. You can imagine wolves having no difficulty watching other wolves having sex in front of them. But that civility has gone at least in the top 10% of the society, the ruling class. So it's unfortunate, but it's not something you can fix overnight. It's unfortunate, but it's not something that you can turn a switch. You know. Again, bravo, the red team, you have won, but it took China 50 years at least of working hard. And imagine, China in the last 50 years hasn't spent much on military. They didn't have to. They didn't want to. Nobody wants to spend on their military except apparently Anglo-Saxons. I read this somewhere that the British, the year after they made the last payment to the money they owe to Uncle Sam's managers, apparently for World War II, apparently the British owned a big loan to Uncle Sam's managers from World War II, and they made the last payment in 2006 or 2015, 16 or 2005 or 6. Apparently the year after they started building their first aircraft carriers. They didn't have aircraft yet. It's sort of like as soon as they have these Anglo-Saxons, as soon as they have 2 cents to rub together in their pocket, they spend it on arms. You have to keep them poor and destitute if you don't want them spending money on arms. The British in specific. And the ruling class in North America are following the British to the gates of hell. Again. And no, again, this time, as I said, this is not, you can't become great since there are intercontinental ballistic missiles. You can't become great by destroying others. And for yourself to become great, it will take a long time if you start tomorrow. And start behaving. And everybody, the upper class starts behaving, start wanting to behave. Not wanting to glorify violence, considering violence as uncivilized, not wanting to, use drugs because they want to be present in the time, not wanting to be separate from the general public, send their own children to public school. I mean, when the leaders start spending their own children to public school, the 10%, not the 10%, if they reach the point that they understand that since their kids have to live in the same society as the 90% kids, therefore they're going to make sure the 90% kids get as good education as their own kid. And to prove that, show me the 10% top echelon of the society who sends their own kid to the public school, the free public school that everybody else sends their kids. Tell me the society that does that, and it's not great. That society is great. I saw an example of that society in Norway, where the public schools were so good that you saw the mayor of the town, his kid would also go to the same public school as the road sweeper's child. They went to the same high school. That is when the town can become civilized. That's where the system is civilized, and the mayor understands that his kid has to live in this town, so he makes sure the schools are great, to the point that he sends his own son to that school. But then you see Mr. Joe Biden, who votes for a war on the other side of the planet and is willing to send his own kid. And you're thinking to yourself, this is not the mayor of town sending his own kid to school, to the same school as everybody else, because he thinks that school is good. This is a guy who has taken a wrong decision and has sent his own son to follow through with that. When I say wrong decision, I mean it's a very invading other countries under false pretense or under any pretense, just because you think their leader is bad or good or doesn't matter. It has literally come to the point that just now on the screen, one of the senators of North America was telling that no, even if France, Germany, England, or anywhere, even our allies, if they go ahead with International Criminal Court order of arresting Netanyahu for war crimes, even if they do that, even if our allies arrest Netanyahu, we will sanction them, we will attack them, we will invade them. Well, I'm not sure how great, how I'm not sure, and this was Mr. Lindsey Graham, the video is out there. So it's the circle has reached its minimum extent, and which only contains us, sort of like me. This circle doesn't even contain our allies. We stand alone, and at this point you're like, this is it. You are at the farthest point from greatness when you basically, zero regards for the rest of the planet. You imagine somebody who is civilized, who has civility, has the most regards for every creature on the planet, and the most regards for every breathing entity on the planet, and doesn't want to hurt any of them. But when you start sending bombs, which is somebody's using to hurt a lot of them, humans on planet Earth, That's when there is not even a thin veneer of civility is left. We kill, and we like to kill, and we think killing is good, violence is great, we have to achieve our means. On the other side of the planet, which people live who don't speak our language, doesn't matter, we are strong, and we are showing them what's what. You think a society with such leaders, when the leaders are showing such a selfish attitude, violent, selfish attitude towards other tribes on the planet, you think the members of these tribes are going to learn their civilities from whom? They're going to learn their civility from the same people who are ruling them. What if the people who are ruling them are not very civilized, are very prone to violence and selfish behavior, and we don't give a fuck about you, and or you. People learn from their leaders, so the whole tribe becomes very selfish, very rude, very violent, and then violence is glorified in the ring. UFC. I mean, WWE, WWF, WWE was a pretense of violence, and then UFC came, I think it's called UFC. UFC came and took away that pretense as well. No, we are violent, and for sure we are violent. There's no pretense here. We like violence. Can you imagine that happening in the 1950s in North America? It all goes together. How much violence you like and how civilized you are two different opposite directions. The more violence you like to watch or participate in, the less civilized you are. It's as simple as it gets. It's as simple as it gets. We recognize uncivilized people as people, for example, as proof of this point, we recognize unsophisticated. We recognize as unsophisticated tribes as those tribes who still slaughter animal in the middle of street. You see, when you know of a tribe on this planet where they sacrifice an animal right in the middle of the street in front of their door, we recognize that not very civilized. It's a violent act. Why do you want to do it in the street in front of your house? Why would you want to do it? Which there's still many tribes, many countries, many population of many countries still do it and like it or participate in it. But in general, because it's a violent act, we recognize it as an uncivilized act because it's violent, extremely violent. It works the same way with regards to UFC or invasion of Iraq, or right now invasion of West Asia by some Polish people from Europe. Violence is an uncivilized act. And Mr. Lindsey Graham's response is that if we have to hold Israelis responsible for their violent/uncivilized behavior in West Asia, we are going to be held responsible as well because we provided bombs for them. Therefore, nobody should sanction Israel, even our friends. Nobody should hold Israel responsible, even our friends, because we are going to be held responsible as well. They did an uncivilized act and we participated in their violent uncivilized act, and the civilized world should not hold us responsible. Why? Because we have a big dick. if you're planning on making the society great again, the first thing that people in general will, by themselves, will understand and accept is that you can't give all the rights to the one with the big dick. You know, you can't give all the pussies to the one with the big dick, or all the pussies to the 10% top of the society. And if you look at it from the perspective of the woman, that these men who pay for pussy have convinced, they have convinced a bunch of young females in their society that, yeah, you should be honored. You should not be ashamed of having a sugar daddy. That means providing your sexual organ for money. And no, these young females should not be ashamed of that. That's normal. Do you think that's also part of the civility as well? That's part of the uncivilized behavior as well. If the young females of the society are convinced that providing sexual all of them, sort of, there are these massage people who have chosen, for one reason or another, to provide sexual favors for money. But when you see that Epstein and Mepstein and Tepstein and Tepstein and Didi and Midi, and you see there are busloads of these people who have convinced girls that to provide their sexual organ for money, and having a sugar daddy is a normal thing, and there are documentaries made of them, and there's no holds bar, and they're very proud of being a sugar baby, and you're thinking to yourself, and then they're proud of working in a sex club and providing sex, 2 at a time, 3 at a time, to anybody who's willing to pay them enough. That mindset is a mindset that has been there since this kid went to school, that young girl went to school, from age 5, 6. What has gone to her brain that she thinks that it's a good thing, it's okay? You have raised a bunch of prostitutes? Forget about the guy who wants that. The females who are willing to go along with it. What civility have they learned in school? What kind of education? How civilized they have been brought up to go along? Men always want more pussy. It's just the nature. That's the animal nature. But for a society to be okay with that, even if it's free, if it's not even paid for, all these women want to sleep with, let's say, Elvis. For society to become okay with all these women wanting to sleep with one man, when they recognize that there is nothing in terms of, there's nothing there in terms of a stable life, but still wanting to do it, that means you have failed a section of the society, or as you go along, a large portion of society the society has failed to teach them civility and what makes a civilization. Avoidance of violence, avoidance of overt sexual behavior, avoidance of unnecessary violence. These are all the factors that makes a society great. How many of these check marks can you fill and say, presence of violence? No, we can't check that because it's that. Glorification of violence? Yes, we have it. Glorification of Overt sexual behavior, yes, we have it. I'm sorry. If you have, appreciate and glorify those things that are a step away from civility, then what do you think is going to make you great? Just bigger guns? You think the Wild West was civilized? They were all had big guns and they were all armed. We recognize as the Wild West as uncivilized, not civilized. So I don't think bigger guns is going to make America great again. I think a great educational system will. You can copy the Japanese educational system, and in 25 years, you can have the 1950s level of, cohesiveness, self-respect in the society in 25 years. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be the, as Michael Berry likes to say, Cassandra in your party, but facts are facts. It's out of my hands. Facts are facts. Salute.